welcome to My Favorite Person, the #1 rated podcast about the manufactured housing industry in South Carolina. In fact, the only podcast about the manufactured housing industry in South Carolina. I'm Clayton Evans, director of the podcast, and here's our host and producer, Mark Dillard.
Our guest today is Shel Suber, the Director of Government Affairs for MHISC. I remember when Shel came in for his interview, I pretty well knew it was a good fit. Typically an interview is, 30 minutes? And we sat and talked for 3.5 hours. And it was mainly war stories about politics and personalities in Columbia. It turned out we both have a knowledge of very obscure TV and music and movie type stuff. So we've never run out of anything to talk about. Shel, one thing that is a huge asset for our industry is the fact that you have a great political background. You've worked for 2 senators. You've lobbied for several other clients. Who were your 2 mentors, or at least employers, up in Washington?
Well, prior to coming to MHISC, I had worked more probably well known for this than anything else. I'd worked for Lindsey Graham on a couple of his campaigns. One was his reelection campaign in 2008, and then he ran for the presidential election in 2016. I was on both of those staffs. I did not intend to go back to elective politics. It's kind of, as I say, as I've told several folks, that's a young man's game. That's late nights, long hours, and I had not intended to go back to campaigning. But when he decided in 2015 to run for president, he called, and you can't really turn down a shot at a presidential run. We knew it was a long shot, but you only get one of those phone calls in your lifetime is to get a chance to run in a presidential campaign. And I'd done a little bit of work in 2008 for the McCain campaign, and it's a super exciting thing to be on the ground floor of a presidential campaign. And of course, there were 65 people running for president in 2016, and Donald Trump ended up with the nomination. So we got trounced out of that one just like everybody else, but I couldn't resist it. So that one, and then and I started out my career in politics, at least in back in 1990 when I went to work up in Washington D.C. for Senator Strom Thurmond. I was there for 4 years, and that Thurmond got they're the Thurmond alumni, as we'll call ourselves, include just, you should see the list. It's a who's who of, you got some chumps on there like me, and then you got some, let me put it to you this way. We pass the apartments down from one person to the next. We keep the lease, and we pass the apartments down from one person to the next, in many cases. My apartment would get mail from my predecessors who had my apartment in Washington, D.C. from before me, and, who'd never changed their magazine subscription to Field and Stream or whatever. And I would get their magazine. And from time to time, I would, when I would be coming down to South Carolina, I'd scoop up a bunch of mail for Henry McMaster and bring it to him, because he had my apartment 2 people before me. And, or Federal Judge Dennis Shedd, he was the one who was after Henry. And then another federal judge, Terry Wooten, he had it after Dennis. So that's how so we all end up in that sort of alumni group, and then the invaluable amount of information that you get out of that. I mean, just experience from that.
Well, I know you do a pretty nice Strom Thurmond imitation. I've never heard you do Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey's a tough one. I don't do Lindsey too. I don't think anybody. I haven't heard anybody do Lindsey very well. Thurmond was easy. He had that very unique, but very unique sound. But Lindsey'd be tough. I tell you, if you were going to do a good Lindsey Graham impression, you just have to. It's more the technique of the way he talks than the voice, because he's so scattered. He almost never finishes a sentence. if you listen to him, he starts a sit and then he goes in, but he goes back to it and then he goes back. He speaks in fragments, not in sentences, because his mind is always ahead of his mouth. And he always says it's the other way around, but he's an awfully bright guy, and he's always thinking 3 sentences ahead, and so he almost never finishes the sentence he's saying.
Do you see him going for another term, another 6-year term
after? Sure. Yeah. I mean, you reach a point at which what else are you going to do? I mean, he could retire. He's he could retire and sit on a bunch of boards and get paid, 6 figures for each one, and not, and just go on talk shows. But I think he'd be bored out of his mind if he got out of it. Plus, he's like a lot of people in leadership positions. They look around at who would take over if I was. I mean, everybody knows that when I'm gone, somebody else is going to take this job, and I'm going to get replaced. But when you look around at the people who would probably do it, you say, "Oh man, I just don't trust them to do it. I think I'll stick around." And that's something a lot of elected leaders do, is they just don't think anybody's going to do it as well, or they have something in their mind they want to finish. And that's one of the reasons it's so hard for elected officials to say, it's time for me to go, is because they look at all the unfinished dreams they have about some of the policies they want to put in. And they just say, you know what, I think I'll stick around one more time. Maybe I'll be able to move the ball forward. And it's awfully hard. I mean, I'm sure it's hard in a lot of careers, but it's very hard in that one because you're never finished with public policy. It's just always another, we see that in our industry. You're never finished. You never have it just right. Leave it like it is.
We've got a pretty aggressive agenda at the State House this year, extending our sales tax formula, and a bill allowing replacement. You to replace your manufactured home. We've got energy issues. We've got the licensing board kind of rewriting its rules for the industry. I thought maybe you could take us through one. For example, we need to extend, there's a special sales tax formula for Energy Star manufactured homes. You get 0 sales tax, and it's a good deal. So we need to get that extended this year. Sort of briefly tell us the steps that you would go through to get ready to make that happen when the legislature returns in January.
Yeah, is exactly as Corey, as you describe it. If you get an Energy Star home, basically the $300 sales tax that you normally have to pay on a manufactured home, they're waived. It's an incentive that was put in years ago, probably what Mark, you were involved in that probably 10 or perhaps 12 years ago.
Right.
And it was it's worked awfully well. And so we go over to the State House whenever it expired. It had a term, it had a limit on it. And whenever it comes up, we go over to the State House and say, that incentive program is going great. We want to extend it. And that gets started in the either the Senate Finance or in the House Ways and Means Committee, the two committees that write the budget. They also decide if there are going to be any exemptions to taxes. And there are a ton of exemptions and sales exemptions. And I mean, the reason why you don't pay 7% when you on the sales tax of a car when you buy a car is because it's limited to $500. We enjoy an incentive like that helps people be able to afford the upgraded Energy Star version of a home. Wow. Is it a lot of money? No, but everybody loves not having to pay sales taxes. I mean, you tell somebody sales tax, is waived, and they're delighted, even though it's only a few $100. So we'll go over there, probably to Senate Finance. That's where I've been working in the past. I remember 4 years ago, I went to Senator Hugh Leatherman, the late Senator Leatherman, and asked, we asked him and his staff, and said, Senator, we'd like a 10-year extension. And I remember he looked at me and paused, and your blood runs cold when Senator Leatherman would stop talking and look at you like that. And he said, I think it ought to be 5 years. instead of 10. And I said, yes, sir. Because, of course I wanted 10, but he didn't want it to be that long between when I have to come back and ask again. So he's gone now, but a couple of weeks, I'll probably head over to see Senator Peeler, the replacement, the new chairman of the Senate Finance. And I'll ask him, maybe I'll ask him for 10 again, see what he says.
Are there occasions where you need the members to get involved in the process?
Sure. Yeah. If I find that there is, if during my conversations with staff in the State House, the committee staff is who I'm talking about there, the committee staffs, the experts on those committees, and the members, if I find that there is a lack of urgency on their part, they don't see why it's important that I'm asking, that's when I most need to engage our members in this process, because that's who can better explain it than anybody. If they reach out, even if all they do is reach out and call an elected official, they could have a relationship with that elected official. That's great. Even if they don't have a relationship with that elected official, but they live in their district. If you live in somebody's district, they're going to take your call because you're just, you're like, hey, my name's, this is my name. I live in your district. I have 7 employees here at my store, and let me tell you, this thing that Shell has come to ask you about, that's real important to us. And I hope you help us get that thing. And that's all I wanted to say, Senator. Thank you so much. Appreciate your service. And you're gone. You don't have to even know a lot about the issue, but it's going to mean the world to that guy because he barely ever gets feedback from the people in his district about most issues. And all that phone call. Now, if you have a good relationship with him and he says, well, explain it to me, then you can. But you don't even need to know much about the issue. All he wants to know is it's important to you. You live in my district, and Shell will explain it to me when he sees me. That's it. That's all they need to know. Then I will go over there and I'll, whatever the bill is, I'll explain it. Here's why we don't like this, or here's why we need this. That's enough. That gets it done. But I only need to engage members typically when I don't feel like there's a sense of urgency over there. They don't understand why it's important.
Right.
And that's where it really helps to have the engagement of the members. If I go over there to the State House and I explain a bill and they say, no, that makes perfect sense to me, I don't need, Shell, I'll support you on that. Then that's good. We're in good, and then we can move forward. But if they don't understand it, that's when I really need the help.
And of course, the ideal is when our member has built some sort of relationship with legislators. Are there any things that the average member could do to sort of establish a connection with the legislator? And
sure,
what are the techniques that work best?
If you just call a House member, find out who your House member is, and you don't have any idea who they are, you simply go online. If you want me to call me, and I'll be happy to show you how to do it. But you just go onto onto the State House website. You can find their phone number right there. You'll call. You'll speak to their secretary right in front of their office, and you will say, I live in Representative Smith's district. I'd like to speak to Representative Smith." She'll probably ask you what it's about. You just say, "I just want to introduce myself. I live in his district or her district," and they will get on the phone with you either that day or the next. And you just say, I just want to introduce myself. I live in your district. I'm in the manufactured housing business. I own this, or I'm in sales. That's it. They'll never forget that, because 99 times out of 100, when somebody calls them, they're calling to complain, or they're calling to yell at them about this or that. You call and just say, "Hi, I just want to introduce myself. I appreciate the work you do. I know it's a commitment on your part, and I just wanted to say thank you. And if you ever need anything from me, you let me know. Shel Suber's our lobbyist over there. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much." They'll never forget that. They'll chase me down in the hall and tell me, "Hey, somebody called me the other day from your thing." They'll tell me all about the phone call. They'll be delighted to hear from you.
Shel, thanks for talking with us today. You've got a huge amount of information and insight into the process. You're fun to work with. And I'm glad that we were able to give the members a taste of that today with our podcast. Thanks for all you do. And we will probably see you in the next 2 minutes. Well, Clayton, that was a fun interview.
Yeah, I know Shell's kind of quiet, but I'm glad we were able to pry a few words out of him.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the tape broke, but there was an additional point that Shell made. That is, if you're a member and you get an email from us asking what you think about potential legislation or proposed rule, please always respond. We need to know what's good for your business and what's bad for your company. And we can make things happen at the State House, but we need to know what it is that you as the members want.
All right, well, thanks for listening, everybody.